Hello, music fans. You're watching the Death by Unicorn channel where we talk about metal, rock, and prog music. In this video, I'm going to talk about new releases that are going to come out in February 2024 that I'll be checking out. And hopefully you find something new on here that's appealing to you that you want to check out as well. I'm going to be talking about 31 albums that I plan to listen to, and that's quite a lot of albums. It's more than one new album a day, so I'll be keeping myself busy listening to all of these. And maybe every week or so, or every couple weeks, I'll post my thoughts on some of the new stuff that I listen to and give my first impressions. So let's start right off with what's coming out on February 1st. We have TumbleTown releasing On The Highwire. This is the third album by this band from the Netherlands. It's symphonic progressive rock, and I've never listened to this band, but I did listen to an early release track from this album, and it sounded cool, so I added them to my list to check out. On February 2, we have a bunch of releases. I've got 6 on my radar that I plan to listen to. Most importantly for me is Persefone with their album Lingua Ignota Part 1. Well, this is just an EP, but I do love this band quite a lot. They're a great progressive death metal band from Andorra, and I love everything they've done, so I'm definitely looking forward to this. They just got a new vocalist named Daniel Fleece, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings to the band. And then next up, another one that I'm excited for on February 2nd is Utopia with their album Shame. And this is the second album by this British band. This is progressive metal with mathcore influences, and I really love their debut album Stalker that came out in 2021. I think it's a criminally underrated album and a criminally underrated band. It was in my top 20 of the year in 2021 at the time. And if they can make that good of an album again, this could end up in my top 20 of this year again, for sure. And then we have Kyros releasing Mannequin. This is the sixth album by this band from the UK. It's progressive rock with alternative rock, art rock, and synth pop influences. And this is something where I heard the single Ghosts of You ahead of time. It's a very fun, danceable song with sprinkles of prog in there, but it was mostly a dance pop song. But I've heard they're a prog band, so I'm curious to hear their proggier stuff on the album to see if they're really progressive or if they're more like doing this art pop dancey stuff. I'm curious to hear this. And then we have Vennart releasing Forgiveness in the Grain, the fourth album by this artist from the UK, progressive post rock with alternative and ambient influences. This is a solo album by the English guitar player and singer Mike Vennart, who is in Empire State Bastard and is a touring member of Biffy Clyro. And he used to be the frontman of the great band Ocean Size until they disbanded. And I've never listened to any of his solo albums before, but I listened to two early release tracks from this. Fractal was the first one that caught my attention, so I added this to my list to listen to. And I really enjoy everything I've heard by Empire State Bastard, Biffy Clyro, and Ocean Size, so checking this out for me is a no-brainer. And then we have Transit Method releasing Othervoid. This is the third album by this American band, and it's progressive metal with grunge, alternative punk, and hard rock influences. This is a band that I've never listened to before, but I listened to an early release track from the album that sounded cool, so added them to my list to check out. That's the case for a lot of albums on here. It's just when I look at various different sources of new releases that are coming out, if something sounds cool, I listen to one song, and if it sounds cool for that one song, I throw it on my list. And next I have Myrath with Karma. This is the sixth album by this Tunisian band. They're progressive metal, and another one I haven't listened to before, but when I listened to the early track, it caught my attention. Now let's move on to February 9th. On that day, we have Infected Rain releasing Time. This is the sixth album by this band from Moldova. They're more of a metalcore band with new metal, groove metal, alternative metal, and melodic death metal influences. They've got a powerful female lead vocalist, Lena Scissorhands, who can both sing and scream. And I really enjoy her vocals in all the projects I've heard her in. Mostly I've heard her in Infected Rain and Death Dealer Union, but she's worked with several other bands too. The early single that I heard from Infected Rain's Time album is called Never to Return. It has a Middle Eastern flavor to it, and it has awesome screaming and singing. And then the Pineapple Thief is releasing their album, It Leads to This. This is the 15th album. Wait, is it the 15th? Is that a typo? I feel like that might be a typo. I feel like they've only released five. So maybe it's the fifth album by this British band, started by Bruce Sword. If you're a fan of Porcupine Tree, I think you'll like this. It also features the great Gavin Harrison from Porcupine Tree on drums. It has a similar progressive rock kind of style with a focus on great clear production and top-notch songwriting with accessible, catchy hooks and riffs. And Chelsea Wolfe is releasing She Reaches Out to She Reaches Out to She. Her seventh album. This is an American artist. It's very hard to pin down the genre of Chelsea Wolfe, so I'm gonna say it's art rock. It's very experimental art rock. She's got electronic, pop, folk, doom metal, goth metal, sludge metal, post metal, and industrial metal all mixed in there. I listened to four of the singles on this ahead of time because I was trying to like wrap my head around what this is going to sound like, because she's done some albums that are full on metal and some that are full on folk. Um, this one sounds like a really interesting mix of all those styles and all her influences. The vocals are really great. There's a really unique atmosphere to what she does. If you're a fan of Nine Inch Nails, Converge, Cult of Luna, and then take those and add like sprinkles of Billie Eilish, Bjork, and Evanescence, it sounds like a mix of those artists to me. Then on the same day, February 9th, Hans Grossmann is releasing an album called Echoes of Eternity, or it's an EP, not a full-length album. He's a German drummer. This is technical death metal. He plays in Alkaloid. Alkaloid is a band who released an awesome album in 2023 called Newman that I really loved and was very high up in my top albums of 2023. He was also the drummer during Necrophagist Epitaph era, and he played with Obscura. So he's got some really good credentials as a drummer here, playing with some really technical, intense bands. And I listened to an early single from this new EP. It's really brutal, fast, and technical. So I definitely want to hear the whole thing now. And then last on my February 9th list, I have a weird one here. It's a collaborative album between Yellowcard and Hammock called The Hopeful Sign. It would be Yellowcard's 11th album. They're an American band. They're more on the pop punk side, but then Hammock is more on the post rock side. So I listened to a song from here. It's more leaning towards the post rock, but it's got a lot of ambient pop, alternative emo, hardcore, and punk rock influences in there. Basically, Yellowcard has sent Hammock renditions of Yellowcard songs that use just a lead vocal and a piano. And then I think they're just sending them their classic Yellowcard songs. So it's going to be more for fans of Yellowcard music, and it's going to be a hit of nostalgia here. And then Hammock took the vocal and piano lines and made whole post-rock soundscapes around them. So I think that could be pretty cool to listen to. Not sure what to expect there. I don't think it's gonna like rank high on my year-end list or anything, but it's just something I'm curious to hear. Next up is more of a remix rather than a new album. Let's talk about what's coming out February 16th. First, I want to talk about a Steven Wilson remix of a great album by Gentle Giant. The album's The Missing Piece. And of course, Gentle Giant's a legendary progressive rock band from the UK, formed in the 70s. I love them. They're one of my favorites. And Steven Wilson remixed this underrated Gentle Giant album from 1977. While the original is not my favorite album by Gentle Giant, it's still a near masterpiece in my eyes, even though many people dislike it because they started going in a more accessible and pop direction on this album, but it still has some great prog on here too. So I recommend this to people, especially if you haven't checked out Gentle Giant. Sometimes maybe just hearing a modern production on it might inspire you to go back and get into them. And then what I'm really excited for is Ihsahn with his self-titled album. This will be his 8th solo album. He's a Norwegian musician. This is progressive symphonic black metal. It's got ambient, avant-garde, post-metal, and progressive rock influences. And it's probably my most anticipated album of February 2024. Ihsahn is the frontman of the classic black metal band Emperor, and he's releasing two versions of this album. One is going to be a progressive black metal version, and one is an orchestral version. I'm very excited to hear both. He's always very unique and pushes boundaries with his music. And then See You Next Tuesday is releasing a remix album called Relapses. This is an American deathcore band. They've got mathcore, grindcore, industrial metal, avant-garde metal, experimental, and electronic influences. And yeah, apparently they released an album called Distractions in 2023, which was their first new album in 15 years. And this is an electronic forward re-edit of Distractions. So the multi-instrumentalist and producer Drew Slavic led the charge here, revitalizing the songs into something totally different and bringing collaborators on board. This is inspired by Fear Factory's 1997 remix album Remanufacture. The songs on Relapses are going to use components from the songs from Distractions to create an original record. So you'll hear See You Next Tuesday's blend of experimental metal and grindcore combined with industrial, electronic, and avant-garde noise. And for this album, the band worked with a number of artists on creating the tracks, including Thought Crime, Zombie Shark, John Senor, Black Magnet, and more. The final track on the record, The Gold Room, is a totally new creation made with metal mathcore band Frontier. So this could be interesting. It's probably not for people who can't handle anything really extreme, because See You Next Tuesday is like very extreme deathcore, almost grindcore. Some of the songs I think are like 35 seconds long, but they're just like a punch in the face of like absolute aggression and speed and intensity. So it's that kind of music. Then Einar Solberg is releasing an acoustic version of the Leprous album called The Congregation. He's a great Norwegian singer, the frontman of Leprous, and this is going to be an acoustic progressive rock album. Of course, with that avant-garde metal and classical influence in there, I think it's going to be mostly piano driven. From the sounds of the single, The Flood is just him playing a piano and singing the song. So I think it'd be really cool to hear these songs interpreted in this stripped down way as opposed to the original heavy prog metal approach. And then Steve Hackett is releasing a solo album, The Circus and the Nightwhale. It's his 28th album, so he's definitely been keeping busy in his career. This is a British guitar player, of course, well known from his time with Genesis. And his music is progressive rock with classical influences. And he's just legendary, so you have to check this out if you like progressive rock. And on the same day, the Aristocrats is releasing Duck. This is their 6th album by this multinational band. They're instrumental progressive rock with jazz fusion and metal influences. It's a power trio that features Guthrie Govan from the UK on guitar, and he's one of the best guitarists in the game today. Brian Beller from the US is on bass, and Marco Miniman from Germany on drums. Then Eternal Storm is releasing A Giant Bound to Fall, the 2nd album by the Spanish band. It's melodic death metal with black metal and progressive influences. Another one that I haven't heard anything from before other than early singles from this album that sounded good, so I put them on my list to listen to. Now let's talk about February 23rd. This is a big day for releases. And top of my list here is The Chronicles of Father Robin, releasing The Songs and Tales of Eroia, Book 3, Magical Chronicle Ascension. This is their third album. They're a Norwegian supergroup, symphonic progressive rock. And part one and part two were just excellent. So I have every reason to believe that part three will be as well. And then Alas is reaching beyond our imagination. This is an EP by this Finnish band. It's progressive metal. And I really love their 2023 album, A Matter of Time. It's an excellent album. I expect this EP will be a great listen. Then Job for a Cowboy is releasing Moon Healer, the fifth album by this American band. It's technical death metal with deathcore and progressive metal influences. I saw Job for a Cowboy live way back, but I didn't really like them too much at the time when I saw them live. But when I heard the single for this album, The Agony Sleeping Storm, I really liked the guitar playing and drumming. It sounds a lot more technical than I remember when I saw them live. I think they used to be more straightforward death metal and deathcore without as much technicality and progressive influence in there, but they got more technical and progressive since I originally saw them live. So I'm liking what I'm hearing now. And Darkest Hour is releasing Perpetual One Terminal, the 10th album by this American band. It's melodic death metal with metalcore and thrash metal influences. I've always liked what I've heard from this band, but I've never loved any Darkest Hour music. I heard an early single, it sounded good, so I added it to my list to listen to here. And Amaranth is releasing The Catalyst, the seventh album by this Swedish band. It's kind of power metal, but it's got a lot of pop, EDM, melodic death metal, symphonic metal, and metalcore influences. I've heard some of their stuff before. It's really catchy and poppy, but also has this heaviness and has some harsh vocals. There's a mix of female and male vocals in this band, which gives good contrast. Then we have Austrian Death Machine releasing Quad Brutal, the fourth album by this American band. It's metalcore with thrash metal and melodic death metal influences. This band is founded by As I Lay Dying vocalist Tim Lambesis to be a parody of and tribute to Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And I know some people won't want to listen to this because, of course, in 2014, Lambesis was found guilty of attempting to hire a hitman to murder his estranged wife. And based purely on the music, though, and setting aside the person who made the art, he can do some great harsh vocals. He's collaborated with a lot of great guitarists and drummers in the past to make his past albums. The concept on this is a bit of a meme and a joke, but it's kind of fun. So I'll check it out briefly. I don't have too high of expectations, but I know he's a talented guy despite having a problematic past. I know he's served his time. I'm willing to listen to it. I'm not going to like buy a physical copy or anything like that or support him massively financially, but curious to just hear if the music's good. And then we have Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum releasing Of the Last Human Being. This is the fourth album by this American band. It's avant-garde metal with experimental and progressive rock influences. I've never listened to an album by them before, but I heard their early single. It was really unique and interesting, so I put them on my list to listen to. Borknagar is releasing Fall, the 12th album by this Norwegian band. It's progressive black metal with folk metal, Viking metal, and avant-garde metal, and some neo-folk influences in there. And this is another one where I've never listened to them before, but I heard an early single that sounded good, so they're on my list now. Then we have North Sea Echoes releasing Really Good, Terrible Things. This is a debut album from this project. I think it's hard to classify the genre here, but I'm calling it alternative rock with progressive rock, ambient, and post-rock influences. This is a project that includes Jim Matheos and Ray Alder from Fates Warning. The music that they worked on together didn't fit the Fates Warning style, so they started a new project. It sounds like it won't have any metal and will be more on the softer rock side. So check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Then I have Semiramis releasing an album called La Fine Non Esiste, the second album by this Italian progressive rock band. And it looks like this band put out one album in 1973 and then vanished, but apparently they are going to put out something this year. I checked out some of the tracks on their 1973 album and they're pretty cool. So based on the strength of that 1973 album, not knowing anything about what they sound like now, if it sounds like what they did in 1973, it should be pretty cool. Although I'm curious to hear like what kind of modern influences they bring in and how their sound might have changed all these years later. One more, actually, no, we're jumping to February 29th, where I've got two releases here to talk about. I've got Dirt Poor Robins releasing Firebird, the eighth album by this American band. It's progressive rock. It's kind of like rock opera vibes. I'm going based on what I know of their last album, but they have a lot of pop, indie, alternative, and post-rock influences. I heard their last album, Queen of the Night, and thought it was an excellent album. So I'm looking forward to hearing this one too. Their last album was prog rock, but it had that show tunes and musical theater vibe to it as well. I think fans of the Deer Hunter will like this. And then last album to talk about for February on my list so far, and definitely leave some comments down below the video if you know of some other albums that you think I'll like that are coming out in February, because this list may not be exhaustive. It'll probably be enough to keep me busy, but maybe if I hear of some cooler ones, I'll like bump off some of the ones on here that I'm less excited by, and replace them with some more interesting ones. But last on my list here is Jacob Collier and Jesse Volume 4, the fourth album by this British artist. It's jazz fusion with pop, soul, funk, electronic, classical, and progressive rock influences. Another one here where the genre is actually kind of hard to nail down because he's just like a musician. He doesn't, I don't think he's like confined to genre. He just has influences from all those. I heard the single Little Blue and that got me interested in checking out the full album because it's just a beautiful song. So, and I've heard good things about Jacob Collier. I know he's like a very fantastic musician, and I've seen some YouTube videos where he talks theory, and I know he's got a great ear for all that stuff. So very interested to hear this. And that's it for the list of albums that I'm planning to check out in February. Let me know which of these you're most excited for. Let me know also if there's some other ones that you recommend I listen to. And if this has been helpful to you, hit that like button. If you want to see me release something like this every month, hit that subscribe button, because I think I will be trying to keep track of what I plan to listen to. And just before the month starts, I plan to share that with you all. So stay tuned for what's next. I'll probably be talking shortly about my top 10 albums of January 2024. So stay tuned for that, and just my first impressions on all these albums that I talked about today. Until then, peace out.